Big time fight coming up this weekend. We have Jonathan the Dragon Martinez taking on the big time Georgian champion out of LFA. He is Zviad Lazishvili. And Matt, I cannot wait for this fight because for you and I, and you more in particular, Jonathan Martinez, bit of an anomaly, bit of an enigma, really hard to pin down what his ceiling is. And Matt, listen, a lot of people might not know it, but there's a revolving door of cards behind us because we have another channel. It's called 15-Minute Card Breaks. If you missed it, that's cool, but you should check it out. Link down below in the description. The reason why I say that right now is sometimes I make big baller moves, and sometimes I make deals, and sometimes in 2018, I just stockpile Shohei Ohtani rookie cards. That's a real thing. It is.
He was smart.
But this is the point that I'm going to make right now. I bought into the hype of Spencer Howard. I had behind me 3 autograph patch cards from Topps inception of Spencer Howard. One of them is actually, I want to make sure I get the number right, 9 out of 10. The other, one's out of 99, one's out of like 125. The reason why I say this is I put my prop back is guess what Spencer Howard's stats are like? Because he was supposed to be a dynamite blue chip prospect with the Phillies, who he's with in that picture. Last year he had a bad year. This year he got traded to the Texas Rangers. 0-5 with a 7.43 ERA. It's awful. All of me saying this is because, Matt, you've had kind of a similar read that I've had on Spencer Howard that you've had with poor old J-Mart, Jonathan Martinez.
Sometimes you think a fighter is so good that he could enter the top 15, and this is a direct quote, of whichever weight class he chooses. Isn't that ridiculous? Like, featherweight is so hard to get into the top 15 of, and bantamweight might be the best division in the UFC. And I thought Jonathan Martinez had a good chance of getting into the top 15 of either one of those weight classes. Now, here's the thing. At the time, I don't think it was that ridiculous of a claim. With the information that was available when I said that ridiculous claim, he had just beat Thomas Almeida. He had had good performances down at 135. And he was a fighter who had troubles in the past. And yes, he might not have been able to mix everything together, but he was at least on a streak, kind of like Alex Caceres is on right now, where it's like, oh, Jonathan Martinez is finally starting to put it together. And what I saw was a phenomenal fighter who could strike on the outside, defend takedowns, had good pop in the end of his shots. But what fighter I really got was someone who can't really make weight, and that's a really big issue, and someone whose defensive striking just really isn't up to par with where I thought it was.
Well, we talk about the weight misses. Let's hone in on exactly those, because before you even uttered those famous words, this is the problem that Martinez has had. He has that one loss. You'll see it pop up in the graphic due to a disqualification. It was an illegal knee against Matt Schnell back in 2015. That fight was at flyweight. Martinez weighed 127.9. He missed weight there. Then he comes into the UFC, fights Frankie Saenz in 2020. A layup if I've ever seen one. A finger roll from our own Canadian Steve Nash, or maybe even LaMelo Ball. But in that fight, he weighed 140.5 for 135. Then he fights Almeida, and you said that fight was originally scheduled at featherweight. He made it, no worries. But it looked like, okay, this is a guy that used to fight at flyweight, is very timid, very shy, and doesn't talk a whole lot. And then he has these issues at 135. So if you look at it, he was supposed to take on Phillips. He was supposed to take on actually Marcelo Rojo back last month. The fight was cut, and it says on Topology due to a botched weight cut because Martinez fell ill. I don't know so much about that because I wasn't in Vegas for the fight. But what I do know is he weighed in at 138 for that fight at 135. Oh, by the way, everybody, this fight's scheduled at 135. Kind of seems a little silly, but that's what it says on the UFC website, UFC stats, ESPN, all over the place.
Drew Dober was the fighter who missed weight, and then the UFC said, hey, you have to fight at 170 next, right?
No, and then California State Athletic Commission.
But then he did, and then he proved that he could fight, like, cut the weight. Like, Drew Dober had to jump through quite a few hoops for him to finally go back down to lightweight, where he's had a ton of success ever since. Why are we allowing Jonathan Martinez to still cut down to 135? Like, I could talk a lot about the skill set of Jonathan Martinez. He's a great striker from both stances. He's got great kicks. But my big thing is, why are we still allowing him to make this kind of a weight cut? If you're somebody who missed weight at flyweight, that's no big deal. The next move up is bantamweight. You would assume, great, this is this guy's weight class. But for him to have missed weight twice now at this weight class, it is really concerning. And the thing that I don't understand is some fighters can kind of be their own worst enemies. Look at the current UFC lightweight champion, Charles Oliveira. I remember before Fight Night Picks was a thing, I made fun of Charles Oliveira all the time because he was so good at lightweight. Oh, to my other friends.
Anybody that would listen.
Anyone. Because he had just beat Will Brooks. And they go, it was a nice performance too. And they go, Charles, what do you want to do next? And the first thing that man says is, I'd like to go down to featherweight. Wait, what? You just beat a massive lightweight who was actually supposed to be really good, and you stopped him really quick. Why are we talking about moving down in weight? Like, I understand the fighter wants a big size advantage, but I think there's a big enough sample size now to where we've proven that, hey, if you cut less weight and you're not on death's door the day before a fist fight, you're going to perform a lot better in the cage.
You know that Zviad Lazishvili is not going to have these issues. Now, for Lazishvili, a name that I'm just going to have to repeat over and over and over again, which I have tonight, but it is very difficult for us English speakers. What a special fighter. I mean, you talk about the lineage of the overall LFA, and I'm just talking LFA, not necessarily RFA, but if you go through their lineage of bantamweight champions and you start with Leandro Higo, you have Higo, Ricky Simone, then you have, oh boy, Miles Johns, and then after that, Casey Kenny, then Zviad Lazishvili. So I look at that and go, oh, well, those guys are pretty good. Zviad's got to be pretty good too, and if you look at it, his last win was over Ricky Steele, and you might go, oh, do I know that guy from, like, The Ultimate Fighter? Didn't he beat one of the Mokhtarian brothers?
Yeah.
Listen, I roll them up into the same guy, just like you guys probably do. Oh, those Allen guys. I get it. That's
They're the
fine.
prediction guys, right?
It was Suman Mokhtarian if we're having fun. But Ricky Steele beat him. Then he went on Contender Series, won a fight by split decision. And then he fought Zviad Lazishvili. See, it's a little bit difficult, but I'm going to keep going. And if you watch that fight, Zviad just kind of has his way. He takes the back. He takes his time. His strikes are clunky. However, he does take his time. He builds the base, and then he ultimately goes position over submission. And that's the big key with him. And I wanted to talk about this, Matt. Another great interview, MMAprospects.com from Sean Bitter back in March 1st of 2021. He wrote a feature on Zviad, and I read it, and this is what I have to tell you. His father was actually a wrestling trainer over in Georgia.
Makes a lot of sense.
Makes a lot of sense, but he didn't want his son to be just like the wrestling guy. This guy's academic credentials kind of just jumped off the page. If you're having fun, he's got an MBA, so that's pretty cool. I'd like to get my MBA. Only have a BBA right now, but I'd love to get it in the future. All of this to say, very well schooled, very well thought. Went from Georgia to train in Russia. Couldn't get any fights in Russia. Ended up moving to the States, training in DC out of, Kaizen MMA with coaches Nima Majel and then Tony Walkeckler. I apologize, Tony, if I mispronounced your name. However, all of this to say, very well traveled globally. He did have some injury issues and some visa issues, and that's kind of why things bounce all over the page in terms of his activity. The one thing I want to say about Zviad before I hand it off to you, he was supposed to take on Jack Shore not that long ago, relative short notice. When you look at that fight, though, and you look at his Instagram, he had an injury. You click to the second page, and listen, if anybody missed question mark kicks a couple of weeks ago, I got stung by a wasp. My whole hand swelled up. My arm swelled up. Not allergic. It was a venom reaction. However, Zviad hurt his foot, and his foot, like his ankle, looked like my hand. It was pretty bad. So hopefully the injury that he had, a month and a half, 2 months ago, it's all cleared up. Obviously, he's must have been resumed to get back to competition. But Matt, when we talk about Zviad, what do you like about this guy's game?
If he gets Jonathan Martinez down to the ground one time, I just don't think Jonathan Martinez is going to have the ability to get back up to his feet. Now, I didn't say he's going to be able to submit him the second he gets him down, because you brought up a really great point. Lazishvili isn't the type of guy who will go to your back, immediately ground and pound you to try to soften you up, and then go for the rear naked choke. He'll try to wear on you more with his cardio than anything, and this might be a lazy comp on my part, but I look at him as a slightly slower version of Merab Dvalishvili, a more, I guess, safer version of Merab. But what I really like about him is he's more magnetic. You know, he doesn't allow as much space between him and his opponent, because with Merab, it's just, okay, I'm always on. There's never a stop. With Lazishvili, it feels like he's much more cerebral behind some of what he's doing. Now, I don't think he's as good of a fighter as Merab is. Of course not. Merab right now is, in the top 5?
Yeah, Merab's a good striker.
And that's the big thing, too.
Zviad is not a great striker.
But this is why I bring up the comparison. Merab's first entry into the UFC, his striking was downright terrible. It wasn't good at all. He was very trigger happy on the feet, but it was something that we would look at each other when we were watching Merab fights and be like, why is he doing this? He has the potential to take everybody down. I think Lazishvili could have a similar career kind of path. If he could start winning fights with his grappling early on in his UFC tenure and then work in the hands, we might be able to see somebody have the type of progression that we saw with Merab, where it was you're just the grapple kind of cardio machine, but now you've been able to incorporate and now become a mixed martial artist. And I really do think that Zviad has that kind of a ceiling. The UFC is not going to book you to fight somebody like Jack Shore and think they're just going to be a flash in the pan, like one and done kind of fighter in the UFC. And that's kind of why I know you're going to bring up the odds. That's probably why the odds are so crazy.
Well, there's only odds on 5 dimes, so that's definitely worth noting. This is super early since this fight was announced today, but the odds on this one, Lazishvili open a -170. He's a -215 favorite right now. Martinez open a +140. He is now at a +170. And Matt, the one thing I wanted to add, again, for Lazishvili, he hasn't fought in a year and a month. I talked about the reason why, but I look at the fights where, again, he dusted regional competition years ago. He fights Josh Huber in his LFA debut. And in that fight, it's weird because in the first round, he gets him caught in like a, what would you call it, like a crotch crippler?
It was strange to say the least.
His face was in his cup. He pulled tight his legs and it was awkward. And Huber's face started to go purple. So a lot of fun there. But as the fight wore on, yes, Lazishvili had a lot of success with the grappling, but when it got to the third round, and even in striking exchanges against guys, he's not as crisp, he's not as polished, he just keeps his head on the center line, walks you down, and then when you throw a kick to the body, which is the dumbest thing you can do against this guy, he grabs it, and then he takes you down, and you have a very, very hard time, and it's rinse and repeat. But when it got to the third round, he was in very bad shape. He was getting hit. He was swelling up. And Huber was able to kind of take over. Now, that's a guy with over 30 pro fights. Long in the tooth. Opportunity for a win. Obviously, Zviad was able to get it done. It was a unanimous 29-28 by all 3 of the judges. But I do worry about the striking mechanics. I'm sure he's going to continue to get better at it. It's just something when you've got that, I don't know if it's Hall of Fame badge yet, but when you've got the Hall of Fame badge in terms of grappling and wrestling in your back pocket, you got the Georgian wave coming with the Roman Deliges, the Giga Chikadzes, and so on and so forth, Merab, and then Zviad now, Liana Jojua. How many can I name?
It's an exciting time.
It is very exciting, but when I look at this fight, again, Hall of Fame badge, maybe gold, somewhere in there for Zviad with the grappling. With Jonathan Martinez, there's been takedowns defended in the UFC. There's been times when he's been totally out-wrestled. There's also times that he knocks out guys like Liu Ping Wong and earns a Performance of the Night bonus. So, it's been a weird bucket of muscles for Jonathan Martinez. The weigh-in issues scare everybody. They probably scare Jonathan too. Matt, when we look at this fight, if you're trying to make a pick, I honest to goodness, like laying the cards on the table, I have a very hard time on this one.
I can't believe you're trying to say, hey, Matt, I'll take your opinion on a Jonathan Martinez pick.
No, I just want to hear what you have to say.
Here's the thing. Jonathan Martinez has the thing that I love for takedown defense. I know I fed this horse until it's died, but Jonathan Martinez has great footwork on the outside, and what we know is that the best way to defend a takedown is never let your opponent get their hands around you in the first place. Now, I know it's a lot different with a caged MMA. If you eventually clinch somebody, get them up against the cage, their footwork's sort of nullified, and there's nothing they can really do, and that's where Lazishvili can shine. If he is able to just sort of tie up the arms of Jonathan Martinez, force him to become a boxer, I know it's going to be weird, because Lazishvili's really going to have to pressure Jonathan Martinez a lot, which is where Martinez is at his most dangerous, so he's going to have to probably eat a couple shots to be most successful. The weigh-in stuff really does scare me, but I do think Martinez has a great chance of winning this fight. I don't think losing by knockout to Davy Grant all of a sudden means they're completely rinsed and washed. I could completely change my pick on question mark kicks, and I don't normally like switching my pick on question mark kicks, but this is what I will say. My pick is Jonathan Martinez, but this fight matters far more on weigh-in day more than any one other on the card. Other than the main event, I guess, now, because we don't know what weight class that's going to be competed
That's it. I like the pop of the shots in Martinez out of Factory X. I think, if he's able to get moving early, he can definitely cause problems for Lazishvili. I think he's an amazing prospect out of Georgia. I can't wait to see him in the UFC. He has a great opportunity to win. He's a favorite right now. I'm going with the underdog of Martinez, but again, this all hinges on Friday. This is a preview more than it is a prediction. This is one where, hey, I didn't know fighter A or even fighter B. Here's your opportunity. It's a Fight Night pick special.
This is what I will say, though. Good on the UFC for giving us these matchups on short notice, because there's normally a ton of fights on short notice where it's like, really? like, this person doesn't really deserve the opportunity, but both opponents who they found on short notice definitely belong to be in the UFC, and that's what I'm most excited for. Like, we're going to see more of both these guys.
If you missed it, you got Martinez Dragon taking on Zviad Lazishvili, and if you look at it, you also have Dragon Mason Jones taking on David Onama, who is an amazing prospect. If you missed that video, go check it out. Make sure you tune in. We mentioned it. Question Mark Kicks, 2 hours before the prelims on Saturday, where we get the full hindsight of weigh-in day. And if J Mart misses, ooh boy. So, both of us right now tentatively going with Martinez. You let us know down below in the comment section. I'm sure there is going to be a flood of Georgian MMA fans that are upset, but we want to see you on Saturday. So, it's Martinez for now. Big time fights coming up this weekend, including a possible fight at, what is it, super middleweight in the main event between Costa and Vettori. Keep it locked in with Fight Night Picks, as we always say. Let's get into it.